Hey, hello there. For today's video, I'll be going through some indoor lighting. So we see here I've got a light source coming from outside or off of the screen through the window. Also a light source on the map itself in the fire there. I've got a number of different animated effects playing around the map to sort of help out the look. But I'm going to take this over to Photoshop and just build up the shadows. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and I'll go through all the different layers that I'm using. So the first thing we have here is, it's a very simple map. I mean, there's not really anything going on at all. I just threw in some random stuff. I wanted to have that pillar in the scene just so we could have something going on, some kind of an object. So I added in a few textures here. This is going to go on top of the ground layer, adding in a few more items. Few more objects here, just so we have some cast shadows, some interesting stuff going on inside the room as far as the lighting demonstration goes. Okay, so there's the top layer. Alright, so let's look at the shadows first. So this is broken down into 3 different layers, although really it's more like 2 layers. The one in the middle that I've got there is kind of an unnecessary addition, but I'll get into that. The 2 most important are the cast shadow layer and the ambient occlusion layer. So I'll go through the cast shadow first. So it's essentially just a layer that's set to multiply, and I've filled the entire layer with a sort of a warmish brown color. And then I've painted out all of the areas where the light is going to be. Or I should say I've used the eraser tool to carve out the light. Alright, so this middle layer, it's not really important, but because of the map that I've got here, because we've got the windows at the top, outdoor lighting is just so much brighter than indoor lighting. I thought I would add a gradient to the cast shadow layer. So all this really is a duplication of that same cast shadow layer, but it sort of preferentially adds a bit more darkness towards the bottom of the screen. There's not really much going on here, it's kind of unnecessary. Okay, so ambient occlusion. So this is basically diffuse shadows that exist in corners and edges, wherever there are angles. So I'll flip back and forth here, turning the layer on and off so you can get a sense of what it's doing. It's a very subtle effect, but when you combine it with the cast shadows, it really makes it look a lot more 3D. If you look into ray tracing, you can get a sense of how that works out. Okay, so now I'm going to go and look at the light layer. So the first thing I've got here is I added a bit of coloration to the lower light source, the fire light source. I believe that's probably set to overlay or color mode. And then the same thing right above it for the light coming in from the window. This time I'm using blue color. And then another layer above that to give a bit of a bloom effect, just to make that outdoor light seem that much more bright. And then another effect here, beams of light coming in from the window. And then the last one here, it looks like I've added a bright spot where the fire is going to be. Although I think I actually had to change this when I went to put the actual fire object in the map. So I probably should have put that a bit lower. But that would be an easy change if I wanted to go back and just shift this down. Okay, so having shown how all these layers are laid out, and there's other ways you could do this as well, but this is how I've got them laid out here. I'm going to quickly run through the creation of an ambient occlusion layer here. And this is a lot quicker, a lot rougher than I would normally do it, but you're basically just running shapes around different corners, and depending on how much of an edge it is, it gets darker and darker and darker. I think if you look up a few images or do a bit of research into ray tracing, you'll get a sense of how to get this kind of thing to look accurate. And it's easy enough to sort of favor making this layer overly dark and then sort of tone it back down again with transparency. Okay, now I'm going to go through creating a cast shadow layer. So I'm just filling the layer with a solid brown color set to multiply. Let's delete the window space, start carving out some light. If you have a very complicated scene, it can be helpful to create kind of a star pattern to just place on top of any of your light sources, so you can see where all the intersecting lines match up. I'm just sort of winging it here. So that's reasonably good. It was done very quickly. You can see that I spent a bit of time cleaning up the edges, adding some sort of blurring effects. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching.